Brad, how are you?
Hey, how are you, man?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good.
How's,
Entering into the crazy stage, my friend, right now.
I was gonna say when is move-in day?
So we have meetings next week, which is a lot of fun. And then we have actually it's Wednesday, September 3rd. So Wednesday, September 3rd, we'll have our new students, or excuse me, our new preseason athletes, all preseason athletes, and even though it's really not preseason, and student leaders. And then Friday, returners come back. Saturday, returners come back. And then we're ready to go, man. And we're ready to
Yeah,
go.
that's
Crazy.
good. How was the summer?
It was good. It was good. The first half was, my kids are all doing lacrosse, right? So three of my four kids are doing travel lacrosse, so we're all over. So it's almost like a tale of two summers. Up until like July 23rd, we're running around the practices, running around the tournaments in Maryland, Delaware, wherever it may be, and then
Yep,
and then there's the second part of the summer, which is a little bit more relaxing. So
yep.
my in-laws have a house in South Dartmouth, Mass. So we were there probably, July 22nd through like August 15th. So not bad, not a bad life.
Yeah.
And then we just sent our oldest to college on Wednesday. So that was,
Oh wow.
yeah, it's crazy, man. It goes by quickly.
All right, we'll jump into this. So what year is this now for you back at Millbrook?
So 19, this is year 19 for me back at Millbrook, and year 17 as the head coach. So it's been a long journey.
And you are, I don't know, it's been interesting to me because like I always, like was kind of cognizant of it, but like going now as I've started talking to more coaches, like I don't know what number you are in this, but an alum of the school you're
Yep.
coaching at, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. So year class 96. So graduated in 1996. And even when I was a student here, I remember saying to myself, wow, it'd be really cool to come back and coach, at this level, at prep school level and work at a boarding school. And here I am.
so how did you find Millbrook as a kid?
That's a great question. So I was going to an all boys Catholic school in Shore, New York called LaSalle. And
Mhm.
I was playing hockey and I was okay. And my dad was an immigrant from Italy. So this was
Yeah,
like boarding school. We
man,
had no clue what was like, no clue.
I
Zero.
I tell that too. My parents were
Yeah,
like from the Bronx, right? When I
yeah,
wanted
yeah,
to go to boarding school, my
yeah.
mother was like, "You didn't do anything wrong. Like, what
Yeah,
would you?"
exactly. Like
Yeah,
these were places where we just thought like, oh, these were kids who are troubled go. And
right.
but my father knew enough that like he kept hearing, oh, prep school, this kid's going to prep school, this kid's going to prep school. So I think he honestly, this is the early to mid 90s. He went to the library. I think he found a
Yeah,
book of like, a boarding school database book and called a couple places. I looked at a couple places and I really liked Millbrook and I was accepted and financial aid worked out and I was like, yeah, let's go. And actually, it's funny. My father the whole time was like, hey, you know what? Like, this is your decision if you want to do this, blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, you know what? I think I'm just going to stay home. And he's like, nah, you know what? You're going to go.
right.
Great opportunity. And, thank God he pushed me in the right direction.
Yeah. It's so like that part of it too. I always tell families like when I'm working with them and do it from the admission standpoint, like one of the things that's so people often conflate like the boarding school process with like the college
Yeah.
process. And I'm always reminding them like it's so different for so many reasons. The big one is like, boarding school is adolescence, like college
Mhm.
is adults, right? And then also, I think you're a great example, right? The role in which parents play in that process
Yeah.
sometimes is
Yeah.
is a really different one and it's going to be different for every family and like but
Mhm.
like yeah to your point right like good on your dad to at some point
Yeah.
recognize like hey at whatever age you were 15 or
Yeah.
16 like maybe he's not fully equipped to be able to make this
Yeah.
decision and
I
like
was.
I'm gonna step in.
Yeah. Yeah. I was
um
thinking more of a social standpoint, leaving my friends and all that stuff. And he understood that it was the right decision.
Yeah, I think, and like all schools, I'm probably more cognizant of it maybe in the last 5 or 6 years of like how much Millbrook's evolved and
Yes.
changed. And I think
Yes.
And we'll talk more about that. But from your vantage point of like having been a student and now being there for 19 years, like, I mean, I think all schools go through these kind of evolutions. And from again, the outside looking in, it feels like to me that like, I don't know what evolution this is that you've seen in Millbrook, but
Yeah.
like the one that you're in now is like, yeah, I feel like a really like interesting time. And
Yeah.
like it's for me, like this, I don't know how many families I've had who are like interested in Millbrook, but like
Yeah.
a hugely popular school for
Yeah.
kids
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, I would say, I came here in the mid 90s, right? So I was here in 94, 95, 95, 96. And, we had a head of school, Drew Casatano, who was transformational, right? He had a vision. He came here in the early 90s. He just retired. I want to say his last year, geez, I get old and everything, gels together. But I think his last year was, I think, the class of 2021.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, but he was a transformative figure and he worked really hard. And not only, bricks and mortar, not only buildings, but just the culture of the institution. Like little things, like making sure, I think he redesigned our shield, our school motto. He took our mission statement, which I think was like 3 pages at one point, into a nice, concise paragraph that people could
Right.
understand. So things like that. He just had a vision. And so the school has changed so much. I mean, even when I came back as a teacher, I remember writing letters, think about this, to recruits. And
Yeah.
remember writing like Millbrook, a school comprised of 230, 220, 240 kids, and now we're at 330, right? And
Right.
that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's gigantic. Going
Huge.
from 240 to 330, like the class load, the teacher load, all that stuff, and then also the athletic component of it. But it has changed so much in terms of just the bricks and mortar, the buildings, like our this rink that we use right now. I was when I was a student, we didn't have it. We had like an outdoor rink. We have a brand new art center. We have a new math and science center. We're building a brand new boys dorm right now. We have a girls dorm that's like 70 years old. So much has happened. But at the same time, I do think the school is still the school. Like the feel you get here, like the mission that we have, non civis et conctus, known and needed. Like it just still has. And when people ask me, like, talk to me about Millbrook. I think the size, even though 330 is still really small, and
Yeah.
so I don't think the mission has changed at all. I think the school is still the school that it was in some ways in the mid 90s, in the sense of like that purpose, right? But things have obviously evolved in a very positive way as well.
Yeah. And I think it's also, you and I as like quote unquote boarding school people, right? We can see it, but like or know it. I think for families from the outside looking in, as you mentioned, like ahead of school, or I sometimes talk to families about like, they'll talk to me about a school and I'll be like, well, hey, I could talk to you a little bit about how things worked in the past, but they have a new director of
Yeah,
admissions. So like, this is like,
yeah,
I don't know what this is. And for you guys now, I think it's also to that point of like following the Casa tunnels now with like John Downs is a
yep,
guy I've
yep,
known for, John and I think probably
yep,
started in admissions like at the
yep,
same time
yeah,
in 2003. And like, I think it's really interesting, like of someone who really knew and understand and kind of was a part of the culture of the school to
yep,
now sort of take
yeah.
over and lead it. It's like, again, I'm from the outside looking in, it's like, a place that I think is really impressive.
Yeah, well, thank you. And yeah, John has taken Drew's mantle for sure, and he knew Drew very well. He was here when I was here as a student. He has a tremendous love for Millbrook School and cares deeply about it, and he has really kept this thing going. And so it's an exciting time. Like I said, there's construction all over campus right now, which is, as you know, a very positive
Yeah.
thing. And we are starting our brand new boys dorm, which will hopefully open up next fall, but we'll see. And then we are going to hopefully shift gears and try to upgrade our athletic center a little bit with talks of a new ice rink. So we're moving.
Yeah, it's great. It's so for me, it's a place where like all of the families that I've had visit in the last whatever it is number of years, um, yeah, I think they come back and as you know, like it's going to be the right fit for some kids and
Yep.
it's not going to be
Yeah.
the right for others. But everyone who I have visit comes back and like, for them, it's almost always like well, we love the community, we love the people. For some people, it's going to be like, and that size is perfect. And for other people, they're going to look at some dip. But I've never had a family come back from visiting Millbrook who was like, nah, I'm not, I don't
Yeah.
like, but it's almost like
Yeah.
all of them are, yeah, I think sometimes surprised, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I would agree. I would agree.
yeah,
I think, and that actually, I don't think our reputation has caught up to who we are in some ways. And I think that our recruiting strategy, I mean, I talk to my assistant coaches all the time about this. We just got to get kids to campus. Once
yep,
we get kids to campus, the school will take care of itself. And also, too, like if you like it, great. And if you don't, then this is the right fit for you. Like we want kids who want to be here. And so the biggest thing is if we can just get in the campus, I think we have a really good shot of that kid, enrolling at Millbrook. Because like you said, I've never had a family be like, not that they would tell me, but like say like, hey, this isn't really our cup of tea. It may be like, hey, I want to go to a bigger school, or I want to be closer to home, or I want to be closer to Boston, or whatever it may be. But for the most part, I think every family's had a pretty good experience when they've looked.
well, and I think what you're right. Like for me, a lot of times, and it's not just Millbrook. I had the same conversation with like I talked to Carl Corzini at St. Mark's,
Yeah,
right? About like to me, Millbrook, St. Mark's, St. George, there's a number of those
yeah,
schools where like when I initially present them to a family, they're like, huh, never heard of it,
yeah,
right? And then
yeah,
come back and yeah, for me, it's almost like they would tell me like, hey, I don't know, it's not my cup of tea at all.
yeah,
It's almost always sometimes it's that question of size, but like almost always for all of my families, they're like, that being said, it's such like such a dynamic place, and people are so great that like we still are going to
yeah,
apply. And like I think about the like specifically the two boys that I have who are enrolling there this fall.
yeah,
Like it's also really interesting, I would imagine for you guys. I know from like a recruiting standpoint, I know talking to Meg Crover from an admission standpoint, like the overlap of what are the other schools that those kids looked at and chose Millbrook over
yeah,
is so different than what it was when I was doing admissions. And like, I can only imagine drastically different than what it was for you as a student. Cause like
yes,
for those two kids, there were, a number of other, like what I would call medium-sized schools
hmm
that they were
hmm
looking at, but also then, it was Taft and Lawrenceville
yeah,
and Kent,
yeah,
Loomis, and like those students were admitted to those schools and chose Millbrook for like
yeah.
I think the tough thing is like the intangibles, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's where size comes into play. And there, listen, there's a gut feel, right? And
Yep.
and sometimes you can't really explain that gut feel. And I do think, and sometimes we get that kid, but sometimes that kid wants a bigger school, right?
Right.
So it cuts both ways. And I just think that we're non-apologetic of who we are. Like this is what we are, this is what you're going to get. And I'm actually very direct in the process with families and be like, hey, listen, this is who we are, this is what we're going to do. And if you're excited about that, fantastic. And I think that size does really there's a homey feel here. The size is 330, like I said, and I just think that there's a warmth here that kids really and families really like and enjoy. And especially for athletic boys, I've got four of my own kids, right? And two boys, two girls. And high school boys sometimes, they're not the most outgoing
Yep.
kids in the world. And I do think for some boys, like this just forces them in a very good way. Like you got to engage. You got eight kids in your history class. Like you got to
Right.
engage. All right. Like,
Yep.
on campus, like we see you. And that's really important. And as a hockey player, like you got to give back. You can't just be here just for hockey. Like there's got to be other components to this process and other things that you're excited about.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, from the hockey standpoint, I think all of those things that like I see at least in terms of what the evolution of the school is, I think are again from the outside looking in like largely applicable to what your hockey program is
Yep. Yeah.
now, right? Like and
Yep.
for I think the pros of that is like your team is very good I know we've had conversations about I think on the brink of being like really good and making
Yep.
that jump into that
Yep.
kind of next tier. But the challenge of that is now you're like I said, the kids I have who are looking at Millbrook are looking at all what would be kind
Yeah.
of those elite hockey
Yeah.
programs as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've done really well with those kids, we've got a kid, Jake Purcell at UConn, right? It's a great example of a kid who, he was good during the process, but
Right,
he just blossomed here. He blossomed here. And I remember my assistant coach at the time, we're looking at each other like, huh? Like, because you have an idea of what a kid is, and he's on the ice,
right.
you're like, huh? He's pretty good.
Yeah,
And kids like that who may not get all that attention somewhere else, like those kids are perfect at Millbrook. And as I mentioned, earlier, like because we're a small school, COVID really hurt us a little bit in sense of being in ranks, right?
yeah,
And that's where it hurt us as a hockey program a little bit because of we're a small school and because people don't really know about us all that much. We got to pound the pavement. We got to be in ranks, shaking hands, and we weren't able to do that for a year, 2 years.
yeah,
And now we're coming back to that a little bit. And we had a solid year last year, but we had a really young team, and we just had finding ways to win. In this league is really hard, and the league is tough. Everybody's pretty good. Like my parents look at records and they see like the teams in the West. Like there could be a team under 500 and have like three Division One kids on it. Like it's just it is a very difficult schedule and a difficult grind, and you've got to be consistent every single time.
yeah. No, and I think I I see that right too. And for me, again, I think about a lot of the conversations that we've had with about kids, but also I've had with families about that. For me, Millbrook is a place, take all the positives of the school and the community out from a pure hockey standpoint like that. I think you guys do an outstanding job of like identifying potential, right?
Yep.
And to me, in some ways, that's a little bit different than some other schools might have the luxury, call it, of like identifying and sorting through talent,
Yeah.
right? Like you guys, I think, do a great job of finding those kids. But then the challenge is, like you said, like you're giving them opportunities, which sometimes, isn't right away going to pay off in terms of winning games. But
Yep.
like, now I feel like, as you've said, like you're on the cusp of all of those things coming
Yep.
together. And now,
Yep.
yeah, I think you guys are going to have a really good team here moving forward.
Yeah, it takes, I always say you can't coach experience, right? And experience matters and going through it. And when you come to a place like Millbrook, it's these kids from a hockey standpoint are so used to playing a 60, 70 game schedule and playing games that are really high end and sometimes just playing like a game on a Saturday night that's like okay, right? So
Meaningless. Yeah.
you don't need to like play that hard. And so it is a shock to the system when every game, even the teams who are again not good, are
Right.
a pain to play against, and they're hitting you every time you move the puck, and you can't get to the neutral zone. And um, but just teaching them how to compete every single day, because at the end of the day, that's what I've really learned, and have come to understand that really my job is to teach these kids how to compete every single day. So when they're 40 years old, you got to go to work every day. You have three
Yep.
kids, you can't take a sick day. You got to come every day and compete every single day. And what does that look like? And how do you do that? And how to prepare for practice, how to prepare for a game, how to prepare for a tournament. Teaching these kids all of these things. And sometimes, they just got to go through it, right? So like last year, we just had to go through it. And you got to lose those one goal games in order to finally win those one goal games because the margin
Yep.
of error, it's a play here and a play there. It's a bad 5 minutes at the end of the second period, and then it's over. So being consistent every single time. And it's just really hard to do.
Yeah. And I remember too, particularly with young kids, like at that league, not understanding that,
Yeah.
like, in 3 minutes a game can get away from you and like you're not getting it back now, like
Done.
like it's,
Yeah.
and it doesn't just mean that we gave up 4 goals in that 3 minute,
Yeah.
like the momentum is shifted and
Yes.
now we're on our heels and like we're
Yes.
never, we cannot recover from this, like,
Yes.
and
And,
kids
and yeah. And when
don't
you
get
have
that.
15 new guys, it's really like, they're like, whoa, what's going on?
Yeah. um So one of the big changes, and I ask a lot of coaches about this because it's one of those questions I get a lot from families that's so different from when like you and I was in prep school roughly the same time you were, and then I started coaching in '03. Um, that's so different from when you started is like now this fall hockey
Oh, yeah.
piece,
Yeah.
right? Like, and I always say this, like I can debate as an educator the pros and cons and the likes and whether I agree with it or not. The
Yep.
reality of it is like it is a necessity
Yep.
now. Like
Yep.
kids want it. I think those kids that you have that are going to go play college hockey, the colleges are expecting them to be
Yep.
doing
Yep.
stuff in the fall. So like, how have you? What does that look like for you? Like, how have you guys created a model for it?
Yeah. So I would say you're 100% right. Like I remember us having a conversation 10 years ago, 15 years ago about this. People were like, this is unbelievable. Kids are leaving campus. And now it's like every kid leaves campus every weekend, which isn't great at times. But we have done, I would say 5 years ago, we just had kids on split season teams. So they would try
Yep,
out, and we had kids on Yale, we had kids on Mid Fairfield, we had kids on Roco, the Regals, whatever it may be. And you try to piece a bunch of kids, like 8 kids on one team as best you can and all that stuff. We've evolved to that. Last year, we had a split season team, not particularly Millbrook, but a couple guys helped us out to create a split, basically a Millbrook split season team. This year we're gonna join the Peak Performance League.
yep,
Hotchkiss does it, um, and Chris Jones is fantastic. I mean, he's so dialed in with the logistics of it, and that's really helpful, right? Having the logistics dialed in. And I've always told our guys, as long as we're playing together, like we're in good shape. So a lot of our guys are going to do Peak Performance League this year. I think everyone on our roster, with the exception of 2 kids, are going to do it. And then we're going to have a couple kids who made a very high level U18 team. So I think we're talking about 3 other kids who are going to try and do both.
yep,
And I think that will work out well. But we're just doing that league and we're playing
yep,
basically as a team. And I think it will be good. And the transportation is provided by Peak Performance Prep by Chris Jones. He does everything. So for us, we feel really good. I think philosophically, Brad, we're just looking to keep our group together, right? And
yeah,
and also give them an experience where they can go to a football game in the fall,
yep,
go to a dance on a Saturday night. So what this league allows us to do is they play a game on Saturday, maybe late afternoon, um, and then and then they're back on campus by 8 p.m. And then they can have a genuine Millbrook experience, which I think is so important because this goes by so quickly. And one of the things that families will always at the end, I mean, they know going in that this will be transformative for them and their kid. But one of the things I always hear from families at graduation is like, I knew this was going to be transformative, but I didn't realize the extent
right.
of it and how important this was for my kid. My kid says, please now. He says, thank you. He does the dishes. He makes his bed. All these like skills that you take for granted, that they pick up when they're out of boarding school and Millbrook in particular. So from a philosophical standpoint, they got to play. Let's get our ice down as quickly as possible. We'll bring in some outside coaches in the fall to
Yep.
run some practices, some skill sessions for them. So they're on the ice every day. Once our ice is down, they're on the ice Monday through basically Sunday because with this league they're going to be in, they're on the ice every single day. Sometimes it's just a captain's practice, but sometimes there's a skills coach.
Right.
Um, my philosophy is just to kind of keep this group together as much as possible and to develop. And sometimes playing 80 games isn't the best thing in the world, right?
For
How
sure.
often is the puck on your stick in a game, right? So you need a combination of practices, you need a combination of games. And practices, I love practice. I love going to the rink, and that's where kids really get better. And that's where some of our kids who may be on the fourth line have an opportunity to compete and
Yeah.
and and move up the lineup. And um, so philosophically, let's keep our group together and let's develop them, right? Let's not just play games to play games, right? I think those skills practices that we try to do in the fall are as important, if not more important, because that's when they're really going to get better. And I've seen too many split season games, and split season is good, right? The high end split season is very good, but I've seen too many where it's just like,
Yeah, it's a waste.
what are we
It's
doing?
yeah. No, I get that a lot too from for like this time of the year for me, like with the families I have. like in this case, that are going to be thinking about the fall of 2026. They're
Yep.
asking me like, well, it's this triple A team or this double, and we're going to do all this. And like to me, my advice is like, look, the best thing you can do is how many times is he going to get on the ice and be
Yes.
getting better? And
Yes.
then realistically, like, look, 80 games doesn't matter if 65 of them aren't competitive, right? Like, so
100%.
is there a model in which, like, I just had this conversation with a family last night, like, look, if well, option B is going to create 25 to 30 really competitive games for him between, September and the end of December, like that's going to be and he's developing, like that's a really good model that's going to allow me to
Yep.
advocate for him with you and be able to
Yep.
talk about where he's going to go versus, you know, you feeling like you're going to need to play 65 or 70 games. Like, so it
Yeah.
is about like those, I always talk about that idea of like really good competitive games. And I think the evolution, I think the positives, and there's some others, right? But the positive of fall hockey is like, in a prep schedule, you're always going to get, 25 to 30
Yep.
highly competitive games.
Yep.
I think college is feeling like, well, we would like to see kids play 40 to 50. Like,
Yep. Yep.
I get that. And like that additional, as you said, if they're going to play 20 games in the fall, they're not all going to be great, but 15, particularly in that prep league, like they're going to have 15 additional
Yes.
really highly competitive games that are going to be good.
Yeah, I think that's 100. That's so spot on, and I think that's how we look at it too. And I think that I can see, the problem is you got 60 schools trying to do 60 different things, right? Because every school
Right.
is a little bit different, right? But I would love for us to get to a model where if you're at Millbrook, if you're at Berkshire, if you're at Gunn, if you're at Salisbury, like you just play as a group as best you possibly can in the fall, and you just, you play one game a week. Like maybe we go play Salisbury on a Sunday at 2 o'clock, and or
Yep.
2 games a week, whatever it may be. But you're on the ice every day, and obviously with the rules, we couldn't coach them, but you get a college coach, you get somebody to help out. But just keeping our group together and getting better. I mean, that's the most important thing. And then families, like again, I've got four of my own kids, and we run around like crazy with lacrosse, and
Right.
trying to make this more humane and more streamlined for the parents is helpful as well.
Yeah. Well, and your point too, I just had this conversation with Kevin Zepiel at Berkshire about that idea of like for them, in addition to wanting to create development opportunities and things like that, just like you are, also, as you mentioned, like finding a model that allows kids to be a part of the community
Yes.
is
Yes.
critical and I think magnified in like a school of your size, right?
Yeah.
Like making sure those kids are back for the football game or the
Yeah.
dance, like that, it impacts your
Yeah.
community if they're not.
Yeah. Our kids want to, it's funny. We don't lose a lot of kids, right? Our kids like it here, and
Mhm.
they want to be part of the community. And I always tell our kids too, like after our season, I want them to apply for leadership roles on campus. Our best teams, Brad, have been teams where we've had like 10 dorm leaders, and
Right.
like, that's, as a coach, what you have in the locker room. And the outside stuff is more important in so many ways than the inside stuff. And you want to have kids who want to give back. And that's why, like, when we do our recruiting, we really want kids who want to be here.
Yep.
And I want to go down to practice at 7 o'clock on a Friday night and be excited, and to coach good kids who want to get better. And it's so very important that we have kids who want to give back. You don't have to be, a finished product when you arrive, but just being open-minded and coming in here and doing things the right way is so important.
Yeah. Well, the other piece too, I talk to my families a lot about, and you live this. I had this conversation with Tim Jonkus and Dan Driscoll as an AD.
Yeah.
Sometimes families are like, well, I don't understand why, like they can't just, why don't they just start the hockey seasons in the fall or whatever it
Yeah.
is? And I often explain to them, like, well, look, the challenge at a place like Millbrook, like my son's a soccer player, right? And so like they're doing this too now, right? Like he's going to play
Yep.
some spring soccer.
Yep.
But the challenge at a place like Millbrook becomes like, okay, when you're doing that for the hockey team, now you got to do it for the soccer team, and you
Yep.
got to do it for the basketball team, and you got to do it for the girls' athletics teams too.
Yep.
And like that becomes really challenging in a
Yep.
school of 300 to be able to man
Yeah.
or field as many teams as like you guys would like.
Yeah, no, that would be So I always say I wear two hats, my hockey hat and my AD hat. So
Right.
hat, let's go. Let's do it. Let's play 40 games. Let's start in October. And I get that. And there's a lot of benefits that AD wise and school wise, it would be a really logistical challenge for sure.
Right.
So exactly what you just said. Our girls in particular are all multi-sport kids. So
Yep.
I don't think we'd have a girls lacrosse team, you know what I mean, or a girls soccer team. Like it would be really, really hard to do that. And I think that um so from a logistical standpoint, it would be a challenge. I think we have, off the top of my head, like two kids on our hockey team who I would say are lacrosse first. Like they're going to play
Yep.
lacrosse. So would we have them in our season? I don't know. And then I also do think, again, I get it that they got to play in the fall. I'm all for it, whatever. But there is a little bit of an old school part of me that like it is good to be coached by different coaches, and it is good. It is good to play. Like we have a lot of our kids play varsity lacrosse and
Yep.
golf and baseball, and I do think it's healthy. Like they get to meet different kids. They know everybody here because it's so small, but they get to see a different side of that kid they see in the dorm, and they
Yep.
get to see a different side of that chemistry teacher or the physics teacher or the history teacher that they've never seen before. And I also think as a coach, they may pick up on something on the soccer field or lacrosse field that does tie into hockey. So I do think there is a healthy piece to that. But I don't know. I wonder, Brad, I wonder in like 20 years if that's where we'll be.
Yeah.
I think that's where we will be because, again, you look at the evolution of fall hockey. I took over as a head coach in 2009, and I would say like in 2010, 2011, we had some kids go play split. And I remember like faculty members being like, this is insane. This is crazy. And now look at it. So I do think things evolve. And I wonder where we'll be in 10, 20 years.
Well, and that's even so I started coaching in '03, and like my first couple of years, the big concession was in mid to late October, we're going to put the ice down and allow them to skate on
Yeah.
Sundays.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, so we're going to allow
Yeah.
them to skate on Sundays. Like, that
Yeah.
was the big concession. And now to see 20 years later
Yeah.
where it is, and also the reality of like, you know, maybe I'm wrong or biased, but having lived through it, I think a lot of it was back then. I think schools were rightfully really like reluctant around the ideas of like we're not going to change our programming just to accommodate hockey or just to accommodate boys hockey. And now the reality is like you said, you're living it with your kids who are lacrosse players. My son's a soccer. Like it's not just hockey now.
No. No.
It is the reality of what
Yeah. Yeah.
what it's become at this level. And like, yeah, I can't imagine that it's not going to also continue to change.
And I do think, you bring up the ice piece. I think it's been a positive change, right? So
Yeah,
think about it. You're a kid from Ontario. You go to Berkshire, go to Millbrook, and hockey's your love and your passion. And you don't get to skate for the first month.
right.
Like now you get to skate, you get to do what you love. Like if you're an artist, you want to go paint, right? If someone were to
Yep.
say, hey, you can't paint until October, like that would be weird. And I do think it's a helpful thing. It keeps young men busy and they're exploring what they're passionate about. And I think that that's so important. And I also think that from a safety concern, like split season, like the more we can control it a little bit, like
Yeah.
so if we got two kids going to Marlboro and one parent's taking them and a kid gets a concussion or something, like the parent might not be there. Like so there is a like I am a firm believer the more we can allow our kids to do stuff on campus, the better it is for everybody. It's better for the parents, it's better for the kids, it's better for the faculty. And I get that we have this philosophy, but the world has evolved. It's changed and it's not going back. So I think we have to be creative as athletic directors, as heads of school, as deans of students, as coaches, how do we keep our kids on campus more? That's why they chose to go to boarding school, and we should be asking questions. How can we keep them on campus more, and how can we get them to engage more?
Yeah, and I used to, when I was, in your position, argue to our like internally in our school, like, hey, the kid who is the actor, like we allow him to do all three
Yeah,
plays, right? Like he
yeah,
can do the fall drama and the
yeah,
winter musical and then the one
yeah,
act. Like no one's telling him he
yeah,
can't do that,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
so I think that evolution now, yeah, I think it makes sense. And then, as an AD, it's a nightmare. Like,
Yeah, that's right.
like,
The AD
yeah,
has like,
like,
this is insane. How can we do this?
right,
But
like,
if that's the way we got to go, that's the way we got to go. And we'll listen. Things change, and you just got to figure it out. And maybe we look like more like a college in like 10 years, where like, they, Jalen Smith, what's his name? Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State doesn't play two sports. So,
Right.
someone doesn't have to be that way.
Right. No, I think that's it, right? Like that's always these hard things about boarding schools is there's this, history of we've been doing things for 200 years
Yes.
this way, right? Like, and so
Yes.
change
Yes.
is slow, but
Yes.
um yeah, I think too what I love about, like Millbrook and I wonder how this impacts to you from a recruiting standpoint is like from an admission standpoint, I've always, I think one, you guys have a phenomenal admission office, but two, um, the I guess range would be right, but like what you guys are looking for in students to me is so thoughtful and different than at other places where it is a little bit more like, hey, here's the rubric of what we're going to take, right? Like this many grades and this many classes and this has got to be their test scores. And I think it's so interesting to me, like when I'm sending kids there and I'm following up with your admission office or with you, of like hey, we think this kid is going to do well here
Yep.
because we feel it versus, hey, like if you're asking me whether or not he's admissible, like, yeah, I mean, technically he's admissible. Do we think he'd be a good fit here? Like, no. So like I've always admired that, but it's challenging in some ways because you guys, as you said, are looking for those Millbrook
Yeah.
specific kids in some ways.
Yeah, it can be a challenge and it can cut both ways. And I do think that's what I love about Millbrook in so many ways, like what you said. You know, it's not just a number, right? Like, so people ask me all the time, families like, what's the GPA that he needs
Right.
to get in? And I
Yep.
said, well, it depends. If he's got all B's and he has horrible recommendations, that's not
Exactly.
really what we're looking for. Like
Right.
if he's got B's and really good recommendations, like okay, I think that the recommendations are so important. Like what kind, and then the interview, and again, the interview is, it is what it is. It's a half hour, but it does make an impression, um, it's really important. And I think that character matters. And again, we want kids who want to, from a hockey standpoint, I want kids who want to, obviously we're going to look at your talent, right? So if we like what we see and we approach them and everything looks like it's going well and they want to be here and they give you the vibe that they want to be here, this is great. And, we've had times where we've had some really high end kids visit and like you could tell they weren't into it and that's okay, and
Yep.
so we're going to go in a different direction, and then from an admission standpoint, Meg Grover would tell you like obviously the grades need to be there, but there is an idea of certain kids and how are they going to be successful at Millbrook. And again,
Right.
it's not an exact science, but you're making a decision based on the data you have in front of you with the kid and the data you've had for the last 20 years of kids who've been successful. And does this kid match this type of kid? Because at the end of the day, I tell families all the time, like we've had some hockey kids where we may have could have taken them, but I've said like this isn't the right fit for you, and you're going to be miserable here. And at the end of the day, it really is about the kid and the family, and we don't want to force something where the kid is like, it's not fair to the kid if he's really struggling to get through this. Like it's not fair. So they
Yep.
need to be at a place where they're gonna be all right and they can grow as a person.
Yeah, I think about the three kids I have there now, or have had like
Yep.
in for two of them, really easy, I think, in terms of admissions to, from an academic standpoint, to say like, hey, in all likelihood, they're going to be able to find success here because they
Yeah.
had found lots of success
Yeah.
academically at the other places they
Yeah.
were at, right? So like you would imagine that's going to correlate. But then for one of the kids I had who, yeah, like that other profile of like really talented, highly capable intellectually, probably was in the wrong environment previously. And I
Yeah.
know talking to your admission office, their feeling was like, look, you know, in this environment here with small classes and this, like he can thrive here. And that's why we think that's why we're going to admit him because we think he can be successful here. And I think I've always admired that about like
Yeah.
Millbrook. Like
Yeah.
it's a really, you know, having spent my life in admissions, like it's challenging. Like I can't imagine,
Yeah.
like for your admission office does a phenomenal job, but I think for you as a coach, it also, yeah, like you said, I think it creates possibilities, but also then changes what your mindset is in terms of who you're looking for.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I've actually told families, I think listen, we're a challenging school, and I think especially with writing, like we ask kids to write a lot, which is writing's hard, right? If you're really being
Yep.
honest, like it's hard to write well. And I think we ask our kids to write a lot, but sometimes I tell families like in some ways it's easier here, right? Because we're 330 kids, because our faculty live on campus, because we have extra help during the day. In some ways, your kid is going to be transformed academically in so many ways because we have 10 kids, 15 kids in the class. Like they're not going to hide. So, yes, we may ask them to do more challenging things, but because the environment is the environment, I think it actually helps the kids. So, we have seen kids be like, okay, they're okay. It's a little bit of a risk. And they come in here and they're honor roll students. And
Right.
you see it all the time. If a kid's willing to work hard, if a kid's willing to be a good community member, like they'll find success here.
Yep. Are you the other one I've been talking to coaches a lot about, like with all of these changes now with, Canadian junior leagues and all of that stuff, and like obviously the uncertainty of what that means for kids now when they graduate from Millbrook. Like, I don't think anyone's got the crystal ball. But like on one end, my belief is because of that, prep hockey generally is going to start to get younger, right?
Yes.
Like I think
Yes.
I have a ninth grader who we've talked who's coming into Millbrook and for all expectations should be playing and playing a relatively
Yep.
significant role on your
Yep.
team next year,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Like I think there's going to be more of that. Like,
Yes.
is that your sense?
Yes, I agree. Perfect example. We are now, you know, we're talking 2011s, like
Right,
that's where we're at, right? And so, yes, again, we don't have a crystal ball, like you said, but it does seem to me that the kids who can play Division 1, eventually, and again, this isn't an exact science.
right.
We're going to get younger.
Yep.
I do think 2010s, 2011s. I think we are. I mean, obviously, we'll get a couple older kids who are impactful and can play maybe college hockey, but I do think it does make sense that and like for example, um, 5 years ago, even 2 years ago, every kid repeated pretty much.
Right.
I'm hearing less and less of that. And I'm not one to make kids repeat. Like I tell
Yep,
families
for
all the
sure.
time, listen, this is a family decision. There's an academic component, there's a social component, there's a financial component. I get all of these things. I just always tell them that, like, hey, listen, you're likely going to have to play a year of juniors. So do you want to do an extra year of junior hockey or do you want to do an extra year of prep school hockey? So that's one way to look at it, right? So, but I do think we're going to get younger, and we are, like as I said, we're looking at 2011s now.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I mention this like lots of times in these conversations, but like I say it a lot because sometimes families don't get this, is like particularly at a school like Millbrook that is selective, right? Like that reclassification thing, the other part of that is the admission side, right? Like, because I know talking
Yes.
to Meg, there are going to be times where like, well, hey, the question isn't whether or not like we can admit them or want to admit them, but like we're over enrolled
Yes.
for 10th grade boys. So like we can admit them as an 11th grader or
Yes.
we can admit them as a 10th grader. And like that piece of it sometimes is lost on families in the sense of
Yes.
like, well, we're making this is just about hockey. And I was like, I've never been in a situation with a school where they think he's admissible but the only way they're going to take him is if he reclassifies because the hockey coach wants him to do that. Like I've
Yeah.
never
Never.
had that scenario, right? Like
Yeah.
I've had it where a school has said it, but
Yeah.
never that kind of that end.
Yeah, there's a whole admission, and that's where we all, even, as a hockey coach, sometimes, there's a whole other component out there, and that includes class size, that includes dormitory size. There's all these variables. And so, you think about it, I think in most schools, a lot of your student body is formed in that ninth grade year, right? So then
Yep.
every year it's a little bit harder to get in, right? So sophomore year, there's more room. Junior year, there's some room, but not a ton. And then by the time they're seniors, maybe the school takes 4 or 5 PGs, maybe
Right.
depending on the year. But it does get harder and harder to get older kids in. Yes.
Yep. Um, Do you think for your higher end guys, and it's always now asking this question, which I've asked a couple of coaches, is so interesting now. Do you think for those your higher end guys, your Division One guys, your high end Division or college hockey players, um, graduating from Millbrook and now the opportunity to go play what we used to call Major Junior, right?
Yeah.
OHL and Quebec Major Junior, which is crazy. Like, is that a path that you like? Are you foreseeing that conversation coming up more and more for you?
Well, I think we've seen it already with some other schools with some kids leaving, and
Yep.
so we've already seen it. Yeah, I would assume so. I think most of our kids, off the top of my head, are better players. We don't have a ton of Canadians, so I think that I don't know. I think the American kids will want to stay in America.
Yep.
That's what I think. But again, that's just an idea. But I do see us eventually. Yeah, like it'll be crazy, but it, just because of the era we grew up in, a kid's gonna go play, in Moncton.
Yeah. Graduate from Millbrook and go to the Quebec Major
Yeah,
Junior
yeah.
League,
It's just
right?
such a,
Like,
but now it's the USHL in some ways, right? It's like
right.
it's it's equivalent to that, right? So if a kid can go play in the USHL, maybe he can go play for Moncton. And so, that'll be a film. But yes, that is now on the table, right? And I do think we will have some conversations. I don't know if that'll happen this year, but I think as we move forward in this new world that we're living in, and we don't really know how it's going to play out. I do foresee us sending kids to the queue.
Yep. Um, so as we kind of get near the end here, talk a little bit about your team this year and then what it is like what you see as your needs for the fall of 26.
Yeah, so I like our group a lot. Like I said, we have a decent chunk of returners. And we had like, a season is always like we started really hot last year, and then we had this like the two tournaments we were bad. Like
Yep.
so, we weren't very good, and it's really hard at a tournament to kind of to turn the ship around. You need practice time, you need time. These kids need time.
And those tournaments are so I
Yeah,
like
there's no
looking to
time.
you could
And
lose your whole season in
you're
48
doing
hours
everything, yeah,
because
you're
of
doing everything on a
scheduling.
whiteboard. You
Yep.
are showing some video, but it's not, they're in their own head. Confidence is such a big piece of it. They're out of their routine, and we did not handle it well. And so we got to think about that for this year, how we handle that better. And then January for our schedules is a grind, a very tough schedule. But we played well. Like we lost some games where, like, as a coach, like all right, we lost 3-2, but we played really well. Like if this is how we
Right.
play consistently, we will find success. So it's not so much, listen, you want to win every game, but as a coach, if you're playing the right way and you're developing, you're going to get better. And I thought we did. We played really well against some tough teams, and I thought February was pretty good. The hope is, and my belief is that the core of that group will continue to develop, and so I like our group a lot. Like I think we're going to be good. We've got a lot of depth up front. Our decor is solid. Our goaltending is solid. Like I think we're going to be right there. So I'm excited about the group. When you have 15 new guys, they don't even know what they don't know, right?
Right.
So like, you talk about something like power play face-offs and stuff like that. Like we couldn't even get there. You know what I mean? Because you're just
Right. It's so
like,
much else to do.
it's like. Yeah, we'll get there when we get there and we'll figure it out. But I'm excited that I think we can do a little bit more with this group. Like we can give them a little bit more of the bone to chew on, so to speak. And so that's exciting. And so I think for the following year, listen, we're always looking for some forwards. We definitely need. I would say we're definitely going to need two higher end defensemen for sure. Like that's something
Yep.
that I think we're looking at right now. Like we need we're graduating some really good D, and so it's important that we bring in some really good D, and we want to bring in at least one goalie. We'll
Yep.
have a senior and a sophomore on a team this year, so we want to bring in at least one goalie who can compete with that sophomore now, who will be a junior the following year. So that's kind of where we are. But I would say right now we're really, we really got to bring in at least two really high end D.
Yep. Great.
So
Um, well, I appreciate it so much. I always try to be transparent. Like Millbrook's a school I love. Like we considered it. I visited with my son and like
awesome.
my wife was like, as she'd worked in boarding schools too, but had never like, yeah, other than
Yeah,
coaching cross country, had never
yeah,
really like been around
yeah,
campus and was
yeah,
blown away by the campus and the facilities. And so like I'm sure that we will, yeah, just like we
yeah.
were last year, be talking about a bunch of kids who all have come through.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Brad, thank you. It's been a pleasure, man. And wish you the best of luck. And this has been fun.
All right, we'll talk again soon. Thank you.
All right, Brad, be good.
See ya.